Did Jesus exist historically? This is the question I'm going to pose for this little segment I'm doing right now. I just am about to publish a book called A Course in Miracles According to AI. It should be out soon. I'll let you know. If you're interested, I can also send you a copy. If you want to make a small donation, I will email it to you. Just send me your email and I will email it to you. It's good. It's about 300 some pages, and it's got some quality information. I think it's especially good. Actually, it could be good for a beginner ACIM student, and it could also be good for a more seasoned student. So one set of questions that I posed for AI is about Jesus and about whether Jesus existed historically. According to AI, what does AI say? Now, AI generally takes the consensus, right? It looks, as I understand it, it looks at all the different places online, and it kind of brings the consensus. So what do you think the consensus would be, right? Jesus did exist. So it says, yes, the historical existence of Jesus Christ is widely accepted by scholars, though different perspectives exist on the nature and significance of his life. Now, how many scholars, like not, let's say not evangelical Christian scholars, they might say, yes, I accept the bare facts of Jesus's life, that he lived, he was an itinerant preacher, he was put to death by the Romans, his followers believed that he was resurrected. Maybe some other facts, but not too many other, some of the sayings of Jesus that are in the Gospels. But most of the miracles, most serious scholars do not accept those as, those are like mythic overlays on the basic story. Now, I've been really following this. I think that the two biggest people that you might want to check out if you have not are Dr. Bart Ehrman, who holds the position that Jesus did exist historically, and then Dr. Richard Carrier, who has made the strongest case to date that Jesus probably did not exist. As a person, as a historical person, he was actually a myth that was created. And I tend to think that Dr. Carrier's view has a lot of weight to it. So this is one area where I think AI probably will start to go more towards the mythicist point of view, as the mythicist theory, as the Christ myth theory. It's called the mythicism, or the Christ myth theory. As it takes hold more, it will. I think AI will start to answer this question differently. But and then my next question was: is there good reason to think that Jesus Christ did not exist? It says, while the vast majority of scholars and historians accept the historical existence of Jesus, a fringe theory, and it calls it fringe, known as the Christ myth theory, proposes that Jesus is a purely mythological figure. That would be Dr. Richard Carrier. And then it gives the arguments for the Christ myth theory. I'll put some of this in the description, and also you can order my book if you want. You can send me your email, I'll send you the book. You can make a donation or not, it's up to you. Lack of contemporary evidence, biblical contradictions and inconsistencies, mythological parallels, arguments against, and then so those are the three main things, and then that are the Christ myth theory points out. And then against the Christ myth theory is overwhelming scholarly consensus, which does not mean really anything, because even a lot of people can believe something is true, but does not mean it is true. Multiple independent sources, the Pauline epistles, the Gospels, and non-Christian sources. the rise of Christianity. Why did it take hold like it did if it was all just a myth? Criterion of embarrassment, which is, like, they wouldn't have allowed this guy to be crucified. If this was not a true story, why would they make up a myth where the guy gets crucified? That doesn't make any sense, right? Why the lack of contemporary evidence might not be significant, limited historical records, oral culture. In conclusion, while a lack of contemporary evidence exists, the overwhelming scholarly consensus, the multiple independent sources, and the historical context of the rise of Christianity strongly suggest that Jesus Christ was a historical figure. The Christ myth theory remains a fringe view with little support within the academic community, which is true, but I think there is a growing, it's still fringe, but it's growing. It's a growing movement, and I think there's definitely something to it. Because, I think what the scholars who do hold, like Bart Ehrman, the ones that say that, yeah, throughout all the magic and the miracles in the Gospels, right? Throughout all the contradictory stuff, and but you're still left with this little kernel of historical truth. But that then it gets, it's like, well, if you throw out all that other stuff, you're not left with that much, really. You're not. Why? How did this movement take off? I mean, well, people like Dr. Ehrman would say, well, it took off because it was a good story, and it was good, and they sold it. It was, it was a very well designed myth, or story. Well, Dr. Ehrman would say it was largely mythologized, but there was that kernel, this historical kernel of truth. Then I asked who was the historical Jesus. I'm not going to go into that right now. Then I asked an important question for Course in Miracles students, but also for Christians, because the Gospels do not seem to be clear on this point of, did Jesus suffer on the cross? Now, some of the Mark, for example, seems to suggest that Jesus did suffer, because he says, Lama, Lama, Elohi, Elohi, Lama Sabachthani, which is Aramaic for, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Which some people they say, well, Psalm, whatever, I forget what Psalm it is, but that Psalm begins with those words. And so Jesus was just talking about the Psalm. He wasn't suffering on the cross. But he also, remember in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he says, Lord, take this cup from me. Do not, why do I have to go through with this? But then, I believe it's in Matthew or Luke, I forget which one, does not seem like Jesus suffers on the cross. But what does AI say? AI says, yes, according to the Bible and Christian tradition, Jesus Christ suffered immensely during his crucifixion. Now, the problem with what AI does here is that it does not make a distinction between the Gospels, and that's problematic. And I could have pushed AI a little bit more on this, and I could have said, well, according to this Gospel, according to Luke, it does not seem, I forget which Gospel, where Jesus does not seem to suffer on the cross. So this is a problem with AI, is that AI definitely misses stuff. It does not always nuance things as well as it might. That's where you as the prompter, or me as the prompter, have to be a little bit clearer about, or more specific rather. According to ACIM, according to the Course, did Jesus suffer on the cross? What does AI say? It says, according to A Course in Miracles, Jesus did not suffer on the cross in the way that the world typically understands suffering. And here's a breakdown of ACIM's perspective. The crucifixion as a teaching tool. Jesus used it as a way of teaching that suffering is not real. He realized his true identity with God, and therefore he did not suffer. His body is not his self. He knew he was not his body. The true message of the crucifixion, according to ACIM, is that individuals are not victims of the world. People can learn from Jesus' example that the body does not define the self, and that forgiveness can be chosen instead of reactions of anger or fear. That's more or less accurate, right? Projection and misinterpretation. ACIM suggests that interpretations of the crucifixion as a symbol of persecution and suffering result from projecting personal guilt and fear onto others. So that, in other words, his apostles and those who were present to witness the crucifixion might have perceived Jesus as suffering and might have perceived him as being persecuted. But in reality, his reality was he did not suffer, and that this was a teaching device on his part to show that suffering is unreal. Of course, this begs the question of, does the Course say that Jesus was an historical figure? Now, most people who read the Course literally would say yes, that Jesus is saying, I lived 2,000 years ago. Here's what happened 2,000 years ago. I was misunderstood. The apostles didn't understand me. And I'm coming back now to give the true, deeper, mystical message that I was giving 2,000 years ago. But let's finish this. In short, ACIM emphasizes that Jesus did not suffer in the traditional sense because he was aware of his true spiritual identity and the unreality of the body and the material world. The crucifixion serves as a powerful lesson in forgiveness and recognizing individual invulnerability as beings of pure love. So the basic message, according to the Course, is that even in the most excruciating suffering that we can imagine, like being crucified, right? Having your persecutors right there laughing at you and, dividing your clothes and mocking you, ridiculing you, while you've got nails through your hands and your feet, and you're slowly dying, and the vultures are pecking away at you. Even in that extreme case, you need not hate or have any grievance or any fear, but only love, because you know what you are. And if Jesus, what Jesus says in the Course is if I could do that in that kind of extreme case, then you certainly can. in any of whenever you feel like you're being persecuted, whenever you feel like you're being victimized, whenever you feel like you're being attacked by someone or something, just remember that I was experiencing far worse on the cross, and I still did not forget who I am, what I am. So then I ask more about mythicism, the Christ myth theory. The final thing I want to read here is, if Jesus never lived, would ACIM still be true? This may be one of the most important questions that we could ask, is if Jesus never lived, would ACIM still be true? Now, Christ myth theorists like Dr. Carey would say, if you're Christian, most Christians would not accept Christianity if they believe that Christ did not live. If that Christ was not a historical figure, most people would not be Christian. They would not follow if they thought that he never lived. Right? If they thought it was a made up story, most Christians would not be Christians. But what about ACIM students? And now my position has been that you do not need to believe that Jesus was a historical figure for the Course to be true. So what does AI say? According to A Course in Miracles, the truth of its teachings is not dependent on the historical existence of Jesus. While ACIM uses the name Jesus to refer to the inner voice and guidance within the Course, this is primarily symbolic and represents the higher Christ mind within all individuals. That's what I would have said too. So I think AI is right on about this. Here's why ACIM's truth would still stand if the historical Jesus never lived. Symbolic representation, Jesus is a symbol. Emphasis on the message, not the messenger. Focus on inner experience. Universal principles, right? The Course is teaching universal spiritual principles, not teaching a dogma, and not, saying that this one guy is the only way to God, right? On the other hand, the Course is using Jesus definitely as a way to realize God, but it's not saying he's the only way. That's the difference. In essence, even if the historical Jesus had never lived, the truth of Acim's teachings would still hold true because they are based on universal principles of love, forgiveness, and unity that are inherent in the divine nature of all beings. The figure of Jesus within ACIM serves as a powerful symbol and guide, but it is not essential to the validity of the Course's message. This is where AI, I think, is very powerful because it just puts it very simply. One page, right? It just answers it very clearly, very simply. And I hope this was useful to you today. Let me know. I would always love to hear from you and love to hear your thoughts. How's my driving? Are these helpful? Are you finding these helpful? What else would you like to hear about? Things like that. So thanks for tuning in, and yeah, keep the faith and keep on shining.